Good evening and welcome to El Oso Fumar Takes. This is our 59th take live from the Casa Cueva studios of Euless, Texas. So excited to be having you all join us tonight. We're going to have a fantastic show, a wonderful show. First of all, Merry Christmas to everyone out there. It's a couple days before the great big day, December 25th. It's either dreaded, loved, hated, or a combination of all things that are emotionally drawn. Yeah, that was a sentence that was terrible. But you know what I'm talking about. Christmas is a wonderful time. It can be an awful time. It can be a stressful time. So we're going to make it more wonderful and less stressful all in one evening. So I hope everyone is ready and in store for this fantastic night that we have. So the Cigar Aficionado Top 25 has officially come out. So the top 25 cigars of 2018, according to arguably the largest cigar publication in the United States, if not the world. So it can be polarizing, can be very popular. So without further ado, I have brought in two very prestigious and former guests of El Oso Fumar Takes who might have an opinion or two so to share with us, and I will join them as well. So we're really excited. I'm really excited to be able to introduce Mr. Tripp Waldrop and John McTavish of Cigar Federation and Developing Palates. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm fantastic. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Generally, John's a little bit more critical than I am about stuff like this. He's generally got some stronger words than I do. So, but I'm looking forward to it because it's always fun to hang out with you guys.
I made myself hangry today just so I could get all fired up because I always find that that's the best thing to do is get fired up before going live, right? And there's
You
no
haven't
way
eaten
you
in
could,
12 hours.
yeah, there's no way you can insult a whole level of relationships with people in the industry by getting online and saying what you really mean. I mean, there's no downside to that.
What's the equivalent to White Castle in Canada? Like that's where he's going after this show. He's just gonna go like devour some like stupid food for.
I mean, I could go for some Five Guys. Do we have Five Guys? No, we have.
He's so American, he doesn't even remember.
I don't even
which
know, man. I can't do.
food
But I'm
places are
I'm
there.
old, man. I can't handle burgers and fries anymore. It's like I'm gonna go make myself a nice kale salad and some olives. And some nice cheese. Pour myself some wine.
Kale salad?
Well, no, actually, I wouldn't make a kale salad. But this is totally off topic. But you can actually eat kale and it tastes good. And the way you do that is by putting it in the oven with
Oh
a little
yeah,
bit of
that's my jam.
yeah. You put it with olive oil, like extra virgin olive oil, and the texture and the taste, I kid you not, is like potato chips.
Yeah, it's really good. It's
It's
Oh
it's
really
yeah, I've had
actually
kale
pretty
chips.
delicious.
Yeah, I've had kale
yeah.
chips. Yeah, I mean,
Raw. That stuff is just
dip that
yeah,
dip that shit in queso and we're fine.
yeah.
We're absolutely fine. That's
That's
totally
right.
totally good.
Exactly.
So I do have to share this story because I think this was absolutely hilarious, and it just goes to show you that the comfort level that everybody has, that a lot of people have in this industry with each other and everything. And so for people who don't know, John, it was formerly associated with Cigar Federation,
Before they
and
fired me.
before
Oh
they
yeah,
fired,
fired you. It was a
Yeah.
brutal breakup.
and so when I first and first of all, really quickly, I just want to say we did have to reschedule. We had Justin Andrews originally scheduled for tonight. When we had to reschedule, he had a kind of a mix up on his family schedule. Like I mentioned in the introduction of the show, a pressing time of year. So
Yeah,
definitely,
exactly. There's a lot of people who are busy the Sunday before Christmas.
yeah, absolutely. So
It's easy to book out something and then not realize that your mom expects you somewhere or your cousin
exactly,
or something
yeah.
like
And
that.
as the saying goes, if Mama's not happy, nobody's happy. So I'm glad that Justin is not on this show and not watching right now. He'll catch the review, but we really Justin, really appreciate you. Hope you have a Merry Christmas, and we're really excited to get him on the show sometime next year. So that'll be fun. But was really pleased to be able to get you two gentlemen on. And so how this story goes is, I reached out to both these guys, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, stepping on any toes. I've been around you guys together and everything. I was like, okay, they're obviously not going to kill each other. But I just wanted to kind of test the waters. And, John, of course, immediately responds and he's like, oh yeah, Tripp and we're great. Like, we're brothers, man. It's awesome. Love the guy. Literally, that's the last quote. Love that guy. So the question to Tripp was, "Hey man, I was thinking about this. I'd like to, put you guys both on with me if you guys are both have the time and are willing to do it. Is that okay?" And knows, no, fucking hate that guy.
It was nope, comma, I hate that dude.
Hate that dude. Okay, all right. I added the F word. That's fine. But yeah, like it was.
I should have said I fucking hate that guy.
Yeah,
It would have had a little
polar
more
opposite.
impact.
Yeah, polar opposite of John's last comment too. Love that guy. Nope, hate that guy. Hate that dude. So, and I mean, I fell for it. I was like, oh, okay, no problem. Sounds good. Sorry about that. And I mean, I like was totally like sensitive to it and everything. And Triplets lets it linger there for like 5-10 minutes. It's like, no, dude, it's fine, man. We're totally cool. And I was like, oh, damn, dude, I totally fell for that.
Well done, Trippy. Well done.
It was great. It was so funny.
Nice.
I was sitting there in my office laughing my ass off. I was like, I mean, like you texted me like that, and I was like, I have a moment where I can pull some shit. So either I go for it and it fails, or or it's hilarious, and turned out to be hilarious. I'm glad you found it funny, Bear.
I'm normally not that gullible. I just I think it was just so shocking because John's was so opposite. I was like, you might be screwing with me here, but it's one of those things like, John's a really nice guy. He is Canadian, so he's friends with everybody. Exactly. So it's like it could have gone either way. It really could have. But anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for
and how gracious you were. Your response, like, okay, I'm sorry, I totally understand.
We'll figure out the scheduling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by that.
Well, I figured, it's none of my business if, if that was really the strong feeling.
I guess that's true.
But as I mentioned in the intro to the show, we had a very popular and polarizing list get announced this week, the Cigar Aficionado Top 25, in which, humble brag, not so humble, I predicted the winner. I'm gonna let that. I think I'm gonna ride this. I think I'm gonna ride this horse for the entire year.
How many others on the list did you get correct? I'm just curious.
Oh, not very many at all. In fact, the solid ones were like, hey, you're gonna be in this spot. Yeah, no, not even close.
Just not even on the list.
I'd like to point out that I got the because I think I have a solid radar on how they pick Cubans now. So I actually said in private chat, I said I think it's going to be hilarious because I think the Quai d'Orsay is going to show up on their list because it's just that's exactly the kind of thing that they would do. And sure enough, and the best part was it was the 54 ring gauge instead of 50 ring gauge. So that was just icing on the cake.
I had a couple of others of that I knew were going to be on the list get correct, Tripp, to answer your question. But as far as hey, predicting the spot, I had a couple out there. I had the 724 Lancero that I said was going to pop at number 14. It's not even on the list. I said that Warped or Mombacho was going to be the number 2 cigar of the year. Either one. I said I couldn't
really
decide. I'm really
surprised neither of them made it.
And neither of them are on the list. That absolutely blew my mind. The Liga Maestro for one is smoking so good. I was convinced. Yeah. I was convinced that cigar was going to be on the top 25, and it was going to be the brand that came out of nowhere.
Mombacho's been popping up in Cigar Aficionado a lot in the past year. They've been getting a lot more reviews than they used to and stuff, and I was expecting them to be on the list too.
Yeah, and then Warped had some sick high rated cigars, like 92 pluses, and they're incredibly popular, which means nothing, to Cigar Aficionado, but it was just so shocking that they didn't even pop on the list. I think I could have saw it, them end up in that number, 23, 24, 25 spot. And the fans just still, want to burn things in effigy. But, I was just blown away that neither one of those brands was on the list. I mean,
there were a lot of surprises for me.
So let's hit a hot button issue since I'm feeling good about myself and I picked the number 1 cigar. What did you guys think about that cigar? Posting number 1, where did you think it would have? What did you have it kind of sitting on the top 25? Did you think that was going to be in the top 25? Did you think it was going to be really high? Did you think it wasn't going to be on the list?
I didn't actually smoke that one this year, so I can't comment on the number 1. Surprisingly, this is the first time in a long time that there's been a number 1 that I've never smoked before.
Well, if
But
history dictates anything, it's gonna be a while before you smoke it anyway. So
yeah, exactly. They're gonna be back ordered for days. But based on what I've heard, I'm not super surprised. From what I've heard, it's kind of taking EP Carrillo stuff to the next level, and um, I mean, getting a #1 rating is gonna do that for them financially as well. They're
yeah,
gonna be available everywhere now.
it's good. I mean, it's I like you guys already know my thoughts on it. It was one of those cigars that it just made sense to me from the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning of I just thought it would click with those guys, and sure enough, I was right on the rating and ended up ended up going through the tournament and winning the whole shebang. What about you, John?
Well, I mean, man. So, I mean, we're talking in the green room before the show kicked off, and I think first of all, I do want to get out of the way that there's no question that Cigar Aficionado is the most influential magazine in the world by
Mm-hmm.
a country mile, and that's not disrespectful to the other cigar magazines out there. I think they know that Cigar Aficionado is the #1 magazine in the world. I mean, it's so influential that up in Canada, the moment that the top 25 list drops, we've got people coming into the store with the issue saying, "Do you have this cigar? Do you have this cigar? Do you have this cigar?" So, even up in Canada, it's influential. But the way that they go about picking the cigars for review for the cycle, in this case for the 2018 cycle, I don't get it. I don't like. I don't think that
It's
process
very
is ever.
dated.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it's just really just a guy who walks into a shop and randomly buys a cigar, and so the end result is, if you'd ask me, is the Encore going to show up on the list? Well, no, because it's too new. It might show up on the 2019 list, but it's too new. I mean, stuff that just launches at the IPCPR has a habit of not showing up. The fact that the
Yeah,
Wise Man
absolutely.
Maduro, which, by the way, was the consensus cigar last year, welcome to the party,
Mm-hmm.
Cigar Aficionado. It was the
It was.
consensus.
We accidentally predicted it, John. You and I came up with our list
That's
last
true,
year,
actually.
and it was #3.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, yeah, I mean, and but so now it's a year later, and it's like, okay, well, you could do whatever you want. It's your list. But the thing is, you've got cigars in there that date back to 2011. You've got a bunch of cigars that are 2017. You've got a bunch of cigars that were originally 2017 when you did the review. You bought a new box of it. Who knows what date that is? And I'm talking about Cubans because
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a box code, and if I don't see a box code, I don't know what you're talking about. So, it seems like it's like a guy goes into a humidor and just randomly grabs stuff off the shelf. Now, granted, he always seems to get his hands on Padrones and Fuentes, and I don't blame him because they're great
Oh yeah,
cigars. But they didn't come out this year. They didn't come out last year.
yeah. It seems to me like the guy who goes in, who's randomly selects brands he knows more often than randomly selecting new brands.
Yeah. I mean, if it's their list, they can do whatever they want. But I think the title should be the 2018 review list or the 2018 the top 2018 cigars that were reviewed this year, because that's all it is. And that it from that perspective, it's meaningless. Now, obviously, like I already prefaced, it's not meaningless because it makes a
Yeah.
huge difference for retailers. And quite frankly, for the love of God, could you release the list in like June? Help the retailers out, man. Release it in April. Nobody's buying all these cigars in January. It's cold, man. It's cold. No one wants to smoke in January.
Well, even more so about that is the fact that retailers, I don't know how this works in Canada, John, but I do work in retail here in the United States, and every cigar retailer at this time of year is doing inventory.
Yes.
Oh
And
yeah.
Or
cigar
year end.
companies, yeah, cigar companies shut down for the holidays.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, I mean, this is typically the time of the year the factories literally shut down for a few weeks
Yeah.
and they're not making cigars. So you pop #1 like EP Carrillo, they're skeleton staffed and, they're not making any more cigars and they've
Yeah. I
got
mean,
to,
as far as I'm aware, nobody's running their inventory levels up for January. Well, I mean, maybe they are because they see the Cigar Aficionado list and they're like, okay, well, we got to get a bunch of boxes in. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not the time of the year you want to be bringing in 15 grand worth of inventory because, A, you don't know whether it's necessarily going to sell, and B, you don't want to be sitting on that inventory for 6 months.
exactly. No one pay taxes on that.
But again, it's it's their list. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's their world, and we're just all living in it, and
That's right.
and
That's
for
actually a really good way to put it.
And so, okay, so what? Let's take this a little bit just from a different approach. What was there a cigar on that list that you were like, not as, and you can comment on the position that it finished up, but you just were like, boom, absolute. Let's take the Wise Man Maduro out of it
Yeah.
because I think the three of us can agree
Yeah,
on
because
that.
that's the one that's like no surprise to anyone.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
well deserved by Nick Melillo. Fantastic for getting a top five cigar, and that cigar specifically. I think all of us agree that it's a pretty stellar smoke. But for the rest of the list, was there a cigar on there that you were like, boom, top 20? Yeah, that's a top 25 all day long, all year long, any year, hands down.
I'll jump on that. I mean, I think for me there was probably three obvious ones. Padron Family Reserve. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk to any cigar guy from any cigar company, regardless of whether it's a competing product or whatever. Everyone knows Padron Family Reserve is some of the best cigars in the world. I don't care, how much of a homer you are about your brand. They're some of the best cigars in the world. Period. So, you know, should Padron be on the list? Yeah, it should be on the list every year, and it should be top 5 every year. That's why it's not really, relevant, because it's not a new cigar, but it is a top 5 cigar, and it probably should be a top 5 cigar forever.
Yeah.
Trippy?
Agreed. I agree. There were a couple that finished lower than I would have expected them to, like
Yes.
the Plasencia Cosecha.
Yeah.
I was kind of blown away by that cigar. I'm surprised that got so low. I was surprised to see the Fausto on there.
Right?
But I mean, that's my favorite blend from Pete. So I'm not super
I mean, that's
surprised.
it's been out for a long time. I just
Yeah,
don't
it came
know
out
why.
I think in 2011.
It's like, well, you just woke up and realized that Fausto was a good cigar now?
Yeah, and it's never been on the list before.
Never been on the list before.
Um,
The Hoya de Nicaragua Antonio, the Gran Reserva, that was a fantastic cigar. That absolutely 100% deserved to be on the list. And I think anyone who enjoys cigars and doesn't have the palate of a yak can smoke that cigar and go, yes, this is without a doubt a top 25 cigar, no question, hands down. Have you guys smoked the Hemingway work of art? Because I mean,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I smoked the short stories like potato chips. Like I could go through a box of Hemingway short stories in like a week because they're that good.
I'm so glad you brought that cigar up, John, because I want to bring up a beautiful point for just for reference here. What you Canadians have to suffer with in terms of cigars. Tripp, real quick, put you on the spot. How much does a short story cost in a shop in Oregon?
I believe it's been a while since I bought one, but I believe around $7.
Okay, about $7 down here in Texas. John, enlighten us.
Oh, dude. I mean, I gotta say, a short story's got to be off the top of my head somewhere between $23 and $26.
Bingo.
But as a retailer, I'm not buying from my stock. That's crazy. I book a flight, I go down to the United States, whether it's Houston or wherever, and I pick
And
up
you
a
bring
box.
home a legally permissible amount of cigars.
Absolutely, 100%. And I can tell you that more often than not, the Hemingway short story is kind of on that default list. I have enough to go through. When I go through them, then they just get auto added to the rebuy list. So Is it a top 25 cigar? Well, I think it is. I think it's one of the best cigars in the world. But again, we're talking about cigars that aren't new. So
I mean, I don't know when those came out. Like
I don't know when the work of art came out.
2004,
The work of art's
2005.
pretty old. Like, yeah, it's not as old. It's not like it's not like the Chateau series or anything like that. It's not that old.
Yeah.
It's not like the
But it
curly.
was one of the first cigars I smoked when I started smoking in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, actually, there's one more cigar, and this is rather divisive for me because I'm of the firm opinion that Cuban cigars don't belong on the same list as non-Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm like staunchly opposed to that because from a philosophical perspective, and I don't want to get into politics, but from a philosophical perspective, a Cuban cigar product is radically different from a non-Cuban cigar product.
Mm-hmm.
From the way that the cigars are produced, to the way that the cigars are packaged, to box codes and the influence that they have on the final product. They don't deserve to be. And I would love to see Cigar Aficionado do a top 10 or top 15 Cuban cigar list of the year and separate that out. That being said, the H. Upmann Sir Winston, dude.
I mean, that's one of the
is
greatest Cuban cigars ever.
it's one of the greatest Cuban cigars ever. Unless you have the palate of a yak, it should be one of the top 5 Cuban cigars that you've ever smoked. And if it's not, well, then I'm sorry that you have a bad palate. But that's a box where if I see that box, I buy that box because it's amazing. Would I put an October 2017 H. Upmann Sir Winston on this list? Hell no. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, there's just no way in a million years that an October release of H. Upmann Sir Winston belongs in a top 25 list. I'm not even sure that it would be completely smokable all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty bold. I
smoke a lot of Cubans, and I smoke them down in Cuba. And I go down and I smoke like when I was down in 2017, I smoked all the cigars in 2017, and none of those would have showed up on the top 25 list of 2017.
Yeah, and that's one of the for people who aren't aware, that's one of the intricacies you're talking about of Cuban cigars, is you can smoke that same cigar every month from a box that came out, I don't know, the year before on that month, and it's going to be different every single time.
Yes.
Sometimes it's going to be amazing, sometimes it's going to be awful. And that's just the nature of Cuban cigars.
I'll get, because we're on this topic, I'll give you a great example. So when I went down in 2015, I usually go down to Cuba once a year or twice a year, depending on how much I need to get my head on straight. And they had their Ramon Eones 2015 edition limitada. So the first thing we do is you grab a box and you start recording the box codes and you start smoking. That's what you do. And you find what's good and what's bad. And we smoked, I think if I remember right, we either smoked 6 or 7 different box codes. So same cigar, presumably, 7 different factory codes, obviously different production dates, but it was all within, 4 months. And the result from my perspective, which is highly subjective, but there's a few of us, went from average to excellent.
Yeah.
So if you were randomly picking boxes and you put one of those on the top 25 list and it was the wrong box code, you would have gone, these guys are on smoking the crack pipe. I don't know what they're talking about.
No, you brought up a good point before the show too, John, that I wanted to bring up now. That we all know that they go into shops in New York and surrounding areas to pick up their cigars. Obviously, they can't do it with these Cubans. They have an excellent relationship with Habanos, but still, where are these cigars coming from? And like you said, box codes and all that stuff factors into it. And so it's just interesting. I'm really intrigued by your idea of having a separate list. I think that has some valid point to it. Point being there too is that you have products that are completely received a completely different way than going out and having someone actually shop this. I mean, presumably, this is absolute 100% assumption, but I'm assuming that Habanos just sends them.
Yeah,
cigars.
I mean that's the thing is they've kind of revealed in the past how they get their cigars that are non-Cuban, but for all we know, Habanos could be sending them. So they could just send somebody down to go into a random shop in Havana and buy a pile of cigars. I mean, who knows?
I mean, if they need a gopher, I'm available. I'm just throwing it out there. Dave, Savona, if you guys need someone to fly down, I'm available on short notice, just saying. But I mean,
I love that John thinks that Dave Savona is watching my show.
Absolutely, of course he is. Give me a break. I mean, after I've crapped all over Cigar Aficionado twice this year, I mean, eventually they're going to start paying attention.
That is, man. This is the second time I've had you on, and like we're having words with this publication or about this publication's process.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff.
But I mean, if you look at the 2018 list of Habanos releases, and again, 2018, it actually means sometimes 2018 because Habanos might announce something in 2017 and you just don't see it on the shelf till 2018 or, even 2019 occasionally. But, the Quai d'Orsay that's on there, I mean, it's got potential, and in a couple of years, is it a top 25? Potentially. Is it a top 25 right now? No, not by a country mile. Some of the cigars that might be on the top 25 list, if you had a Cuban top 25 list, would be the Cohiba Cosecha, the Monte Cristo 1935, the Cohiba Talismans, maybe the Bolivar Soberanos, but
Oh yeah.
again, I don't think they're ready this year. The Trinidad La Trovas, those were phenomenal, but instead they went with a Kate Orsay and a Cohiba Siglo 5 and a
Six.
Tubo
Six
because
tubo.
it's all about plume. I mean I don't even understand the point of putting a cigar on there that's Tubo or non-Tubo. What I don't know what the point of that was.
I don't get it either. For me, tubos generally don't smoke as well as non-tubo versions. They don't age as well. The only reason in my mind to ever get a tubo is like if you need
It's a
something that can
gift.
as a gift, something that's not going to be in a humidor for a reasonable amount of time, for a week, a month, maybe at the most.
Well, I get asked that question all the time. I take my cigars out of tubes when
I,
I'm
I usually do too. If they're sitting in my humidor, I don't want those tubes molding up. But I you know
You
I'll,
mean
I'll
you
keep
mean you
tubes.
mean plume?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't want I don't want any, I don't want too much plume.
yeah, yeah.
I have a limit for plume. But for tubos, like the thing that I use tubos for is if I'm taking a cigar somewhere and I just want one single cigar, I'll find a tubo that fits it, and that way I can toss in my pocket without breaking it in half.
all right. So I wanted to kind of take this list and kind of flip it around and inside out. And I was kind of I asked you guys to do a little bit of preparation on this next part, and I kind of wanted to do a couple of things with it, but some of it just kind of was like, we don't. I didn't want to turn this into a marathon or anything like that as far as kind of going about it. But what I wanted to do was each of us go through and kind of take the cigars that are on this list that we've smoked this year and kind of rank them ourselves and just have fun with it. So it's cigars on the list that we've smoked. So presumably, we haven't smoked all of them. I know I haven't smoked all of them this year, and I just kind of re-rank them on our own personal basis. Not saying, hey, well, if you guys want to say Cigar Aficionado got it wrong, that's fine. I'm not saying they necessarily got it wrong. I'm just
I'll
saying where
say
I would
something that they
necessarily.
definitely got wrong.
But what I will say that um, I think is important is that what's really interesting about this list is that it doesn't matter if polarizing absolutely describes this because it doesn't matter if people absolutely think it's 100% horseshit or if they think it's absolute gospel.
Yeah.
Everybody tunes in this week, and
Hmm.
everybody is just enamored with the list. They're either waiting to bitch or they're waiting to be you know proven right like myself, or or they're just waiting to see what absolutely gets it.
Mm.
um and I'd really like to see, like, I'd really would like to have a conversation with, like, someone like like Lido, Ernesto, um and see what their thoughts were at that moment, like what happened, you know if they could recreate that moment, what was it like, and when they found out that, and why it means so much. We can pontificate and say, well, like, it means more sales, it means more this, it means more that. But what does that honor really truly mean to someone like them? I mean, it's a big deal. I'm not trying to make light of it
Yeah.
at all. On the contrary, I just think it would be really interesting to kind of hear that perspective from them.
Well,
So without,
sorry.
go ahead, John.
I was
No, go
just
ahead,
gonna
please.
say. I mean, I think there's a lot of cigar manufacturers that have gone on record to say, it's almost like Pete Johnson's the
It's
unholy
almost a
13, the
curse.
unlucky 13. It's a blessing and a curse because how many times, like you talk, like I think La Flor Dominicana is on record as saying, they wish at times they had never been on the list because what happens is, people who don't. I'm trying to phrase this in a delicate way, and I probably just should say it, but people who don't otherwise carry your product all of a sudden are calling you to carry your product, and they should have been calling you to carry your product to begin with. But now you've got this big run on product, and you don't have a relationship with some of these companies, these retailers. So you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place because you're saying, well, do I ensure that distribution goes to the retailers who have supported us this entire time, or do we take a chance and ship what limited stock that we have left over? Because now all of a sudden, we've got a million more orders than we did before, and try and put them in retailers that don't carry our product currently, and that's a tough choice for any manufacturer, I think.
I mean, just think about this. We kind of, we sort of talked about this on the show that I did with Aaron Loomis and Cigar Coop. What happens if a company like Mombacho gets number one in their current state of production?
They buy a new factory. That's what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean,
2 new factories.
Right. I mean, they're obviously going to get an influx of money, and that's great, and they can absolutely make rapid changes.
Mm-hmm.
But is that going to be enough to? I mean, look. I mean, Alec Bradley. Alan Rubin has fallen on the sword so many times about the Prensado and the disaster that followed that.
Yeah.
It's and hats off to him for honesty and being so forthright about that and being so candid. And Lito, to his credit too, he never intended the Andalusian Bull and still doesn't ever intend to make that a regular production cigar. That's a limited edition, limited release rather, cigar that it always will be, just because of the mold and the tobacco and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things. I was absolutely convinced there wasn't going to be a Cuban, although my colleagues didn't believe that. They felt like it was a Cuban, and it wasn't. And this isn't me bragging again. It really, but my theory, just skewed head of a thought was that 3 years in a row of a cigar that the typical consumer can't get.
Yeah.
Unless you're John in Canada, but that's only part of the market. The United States is a huge cigar market. It's the number one cigar market in the world. And now you've got 3 cigars, 3 previous number ones, 3 years in a row that you can't get. They're not regular production.
Bear, the joke of it is we've got 19 stores, and there's times where some of the Cuban cigars that are on this list, we can't even get distribution in Canada, right? And this is before it's even on the list. You try to order a product sometimes, and it's like, well, those boxes are back ordered for 2 months. Yeah.
So the Sir Winston's hard to get now. Or what before the list came out was hard to get.
Yeah.
Like you didn't see it, and then
Sir Winston's are hard to get in Cuba. I had to go to Cuba. I think I'm famously on the record as going 4 times before I saw a box of Sir Winston's in the wild.
That's insane.
Right. And this is the country that produces it, right? Because that's just, again, that's how sometimes Cuban production works. But I mean, like you were saying, some of the cigars that have showed up on the list, I mean, there's people that have been smoking for 35, 40 years, and they're like, yeah, I've never smoked that cigar, and I probably never will smoke that cigar. So, I mean, you got to wonder from a retailer's perspective, how relevant is listing that cigar on the list at all? Because no one's going to get their hands on it. Has anyone got their hands on the number one from last year?
Well, so actually, I one of my local retailers, I talked to him about that. I went in, and he had a box of Eye of the Sharks.
What?
$100 a piece. And I was like, Tony, come on, man. Do you really expect people to pay $100 for these? And he was straight up. He was like, I bought them from another retailer. I paid $35 a piece.
Wow.
And he said that the day that box came in, a guy who he thought was homeless came in and was looking around the shop, and he's like, can I help you, man? He's like, yeah, I'm just looking around. And he's like, keeping an eye on him in the humidor. And the guy sees it, and he goes, how much is one of those? And he's like, $100. And he's like, all right, I'll have one.
Wow.
Because he knew that it was the number one cigar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, again, it just reinforces that showing up on the Cigar Aficionado list, it's a license to
cranks
print
demand
money.
up for people. Like, the thing with the number one, like, as much as people online like to say it doesn't matter, whatever is number one, people who do not smoke cigars will buy that cigar.
Yeah.
That's how much demand is going to go up. People that buy cigars and people that don't really smoke are going to end up buying that cigar.
You know what I'd like to know, Bear? I'd like to know if you went to some of these companies and did a 5 year later or a 4 year later and said, it's been 4 years since your cigar got whatever spot. Let's say number one. Let's just assume is number one.
Well, we never talked to Padron, but
right,
keep going.
Yeah. But you'd say, was it worth it? Like, was it worth it to your business? Did over that 4 year period, did that benefit you or did that ultimately hurt you in terms of, overall sales? And I'm assuming that most of them are going to say it helped them because overall sales went up. But you got to wonder in terms of, sudden production jumps and relationships with retailers, from a total perspective, does it really help you? I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I want to clarify my remark about Padron. It was more of a joke. Not that they would never talk to someone like me. Moreover, they would, will it ever be 4 or 5 years from the last time they hit number one?
Yeah, it's been a long time since they've been number one.
So,
which is funny because I would if I was randomly picking cigars, Padron would probably end up more often than not for me being number one. And it'd probably be a 1926 Family Reserve every time.
I think it's something to shoot for. I mean, Jose Ortega of My Father's is on My Father's Cigars is on record. If he wants the record, he wants to tie the record and eventually beat it. He wants to be in that conversation with Padron. Of course, as every company does, I'm assuming. But it's I mean, they're the ones that got the closest shot. I mean, if you take Habanos out of it and not have Habanos as a collective agent, a collective company as one. My Father's the only one that's in the ballpark with two, and so it really would be an interesting analysis to kind of look at, what those companies have done. And Coop has actually did that when he was kind of doing these announcements of when these these companies were rolling out. And he was talking actually about from the perspective of the number two cigar, which was really interesting. Because you see some cigars that are number two that, have done. There's a couple that have never been back on the list or have fallen off or fallen out of favor, and then some who have kind of risen to prominence. But that's it remains to be seen. Like actually, he finished in the top 25 barely this year. Was Dion Giolito with that? He's a number two. He's a previous number two winner. And he finished on the back end of the top 25, which, I mean, let's face it, guys. I mean, we often say this, and we all, the three of us, know Juan Cancel, and we continually throw him under the bus for this comment. But he says that he would rather be a number one cigar of the year for any of the online media sites that we work for or work with than be the number one cigar in Cigar Aficionado, which is I still say it's bullshit. I still call him on it. He had a great explanation on my show, and I really appreciate him being so honest and everything. And I think his idealism is great.
Philosophically, I completely understand where he's coming from.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But that would make you want to, like, getting number one, if you're an unknown company like that, would make you, you'd immediately be one of the big boys.
But getting 25 for someone for that company too.
Yeah, even 25, just being on the list.
Being on the list. Yeah, being on the list is, for a company that's smaller, a company that's not, Padron or Fuente, it's an enormous difference because you're literally being put on the map for millions and millions and millions of consumers that don't even know your brand exists.
Yeah, they've never heard the name.
Exactly. So we've mentioned this company a couple times tonight. If Mombacho had gotten on the top 25 list this year, and say, Tripp, you're sitting right in front of me, so I'll use Cigar Federation as an example. If Cigar Federation named a Mombacho cigar the number one cigar of the year, I hope I'm not doing any spoilers here, but I'm just saying, if that had happened and Mombacho had been they'd been number 25 on this year's list. Okay, we all three of us have great relationship with Claudio and Rob and all the guys in Mombacho. Great people to work with.
I hate that Rob guy, man.
Yeah, okay, that guy's the worst.
The worst.
That being said, they're going to be mentioning that in interviews, in advertisements, in publications. They're going to be putting that Cigar Aficionado ranking out there, over Cigar Federation, 10 times over. And that's
Yeah.
even, and the reason I picked you, Tripp, was because Rob is previously associated with Cigar
Yeah.
Federation. Even with that relationship and that deep, they would put the Cigar Aficionado ranking out there first. And that's not a slight.
No, not at all.
It's just the reality. It's business, right?
Hmm.
And just the prestige of being on this list is just absolutely, it's company altering.
Yeah.
And so, again, like you said, philosophically, it's something to admire for Juan for saying that and putting that out there and he's adamant. I mean, he absolutely is adamant, but I, I'm thoroughly convinced if he hit number 25 next year, that would become the behavior for Cubaraqueño.
Yeah.
He's mentioning that ranking
Oh, of course.
over
Um,
an online media.
I
And
think he would
again,
admit
that's not
to
a
that.
slight. I'm not trying to repeatedly drag him under the bus. I'm just
I think
saying.
the thing with him is it means more to him personally.
Yes.
Like it doesn't mean more to his pocketbook for sure. It would definitely mean more to his wallet on the Cigar Aficionado list. But he has a personal appreciation for, the
Sure.
fact that his product is on anyone's list. And he knows that we're people who are small groups of people who are passionate about it. We don't have dozens of reviewers like CA does that are smoking cigars blind and just writing numbers down. So I understand where he's coming from, but I agree with you. He'd be touting that all night long.
I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the qualities just in general that I like about him so much is that he in a lot of ways, I guess he reminds me of myself. I'm repeatedly humbled to be able to talk to some of the people that I do, and I have
Hmm.
an amazing appreciation for what he does and as a brand owner and for what you my colleagues do in the online media. I just have an appreciation and admiration for it. So I think that's why I'm drawn to him personally, is because the way I I I completely believe his sincerity and how humbled he is when another retailer brings him in, or developing Palates last year names them the Themis the number one cigar of the year for them.
Hmm.
Like in the moment it's 100%. I just if if it ever pops 25 or 24, or, anything on Cigar Aficionado, it's going to be company altering for
Yeah.
them or anybody. It really is. So I wanted to get to the main attraction tonight. And so I kind of I asked you guys to do, like I said, I asked you guys to do a little preparation work ahead. And we're going to take the cigars on this list that we have smoked in the past year. I've done 17. I've smoked 17 of these cigars. Tripp, how many have you smoked in the
I've
past
smoked
year?
in the last year. It's about 10.
10?
All told, it's 14.
All told, 14. Yeah. Okay. John?
In the last year, how many of these have I smoked?
Yeah.
I just went how many of these I smoked, period. So if you went based on the last year, I mean, for me, it's not even 5 or 6. And again, that's, it'd be 6. And that's really as a result of 99%. Well, that's not true. Let me back up. 90% of the time that I'm smoking new product from the IPCPR of that year for review.
Yeah.
And the 10% of the time that I'm not smoking cigars for review, I'm smoking, the best picks from previous years, because that's what I buy. Because, there's a reason why they're in my top list for the year. It's because they're great, and that's what I'm smoking. So, would the Melanio be on that list? No. The last time I smoked a Melanio would have been, 2017 maybe, 2016. And, ironically, I'm an Oliva fanboy. I have like boxes of nubs. I have like every box of V Maduro going back to, 2008. And for me, the Melanio was just a miss. And,
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Like
Yeah.
for me, the Melanio is probably my least favorite of any of the Oliva. Like I'd rather have a master selection
yes,
or master blend or whatever it is.
Master Blend number 3, yeah.
I'd rather
Hands
have
down.
that over a Melanio. I just don't like the Melanio.
Yeah.
Are you guys not fans of the Master Blend number 3?
No, I like the master blend number 3,
I was going to say,
but the
I
Melanio
like that
is
cigar.
one of my least favorite. Like it's a cigar that I know is objectively pretty good, but I just can't get into it.
Yeah,
That
it just
cigar's
doesn't hit
just
my
a complete
palate
miss
right.
for me.
I know people go crazy. I mean, I run into people all the time, and they're like, "I love that cigar. It's my favorite Oliva." I'm like, "All right, well, and that's I think where you can get into an objective versus subjective flavor perspective.
It's
I mean,
it's ironic
yeah,
about Oliva because this year I was convinced that the O Churchill was going to make the list for Oliva, and it's
you got
interesting about that.
size.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. This I pointed to the size. It actually got a pretty decent rating, but the thing about the O is I went through a phase, when it first came out and years after that, where I was just I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then I went through a couple of years where I've loathed that cigar. Like I would go back to him like, surely I just got a bad one. I used to love the cigar, and then just oh God, it was awful. And then I revisited it recently, and it's back to it's not back to that original for what I remember that original love of it, but it's so good
Yeah.
again. It's and thank God because
Was
I
was
did
that
not
a
want
couple
that to be
years
my last
surrounding?
memory. What's that?
Was that a few years surrounding the time that the Melanio got #1 and production might
Yeah,
have started
ironically,
slipping?
yeah, ironically or not ironically, yes, it was. So yeah, I I'm not saying that I'm not criticizing the production of it. I'm just saying that during that time, my palate or something, it just no, just no, it just kept missing, man, kept missing on my palate for certain. So, John's kind of picked the perfect number. I wanted to let you guys look at it from a perspective of all the cigars that you've smoked in the last year, and I wanted to kind of subjectively go through it and just, but all time. So not the cigars that you've had in the not these cigars in the past year that you've had, but just all time. Okay, because some of them have been around for longer, and I wanted us to rank our top five. That's what I wanted to do tonight. So, um, I will go first, and the fifth cigar from the list of cigars that I've smoked this year, I am actually going with a Cuban because I actually had a Cohiba Siglo 6 Tubo. Yes, even the
What?
Tubo. And I really enjoyed it. I I have a really interesting history with Cubans. I'm a bigger fan of some of the lesser popular brands.
Mm.
I'm a big Juan Lopez guy. I love Ramon Yones, Bolivar, and they're somewhat popular. But when you talk to any layman about Cubans, people are gonna be like the Monte Cristos, Cohiba, like this one. Uh, and so the fact that I enjoyed the Cohiba that much, it was really, really, really stellar. So I really enjoyed it. And so that is my number five cigar out of the cigars that I've smoked this past year, all out of my all-time smoking experience. So did you guys understand the concept? I
Yeah,
feel like I'm being a little bit confusing.
to
So
just to kind of re-rank the ones that we've smoked.
re-rank the ones that you've smoked in the
Um,
last year, but for all time's sake. So
yeah,
to paint a perspective, you guys aren't fans of the Melanio. So I don't suspect, even if you've had a Melanio in the last 12 months, that the Melanio would appear on your top five.
no,
Maybe it would. So
I didn't know we were doing top five. I just ranked the 15 that I smoked. I actually realized it's 16 because I have smoked a Siglo 6 before, but I think it's probably been about 10 years, and like I don't have any memory of how much I enjoyed it. I'm sure I liked it, but um, so my top five. Number five is Sir Winston, because like we John and I were talking about before, that is to me one of the best Cubans of all time. I haven't smoked one from every box code like John has, but I've had a handful of them, and every one of them has been totally on point. Number
but there's still
four,
four cigars that are ahead of it.
yeah, because
Interesting
there's
enough.
four
Okay.
other cigars on this list that I think are incredible cigars. The Plasencia Cosecha, I talked about in the green room. That cigar blew me away. Historically, I haven't been a big fan of Plasencia, but that cigar I think is one of the best ones they've ever made, if not the best. I'd put that right against the Almafuerte, which is kind of it's their Cadillac. Am I jumping ahead? Should I just do my top five?
That no, that was great. So you did too. Like I want to hear John's.
Okay,
John, you do your five and four, and I'll come back around to my
I
fourth one.
I think
I jumped
I think
again.
I completely misunderstood the exercise, which is kind of funny, because if I understand this correctly, we're talking about the sort of top five cigars we've smoked this year as they sort of appear on our overall list. Because I'm a bit of a snob in terms of what I would rank as the best five cigars I've ever smoked. and this is going to sound really rude, but none of the cigars I smoked this year touched that top five list. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So if I go back and I say, the best five cigars I've ever ranked, does anything that I've smoked this year compare? No, it doesn't.
Okay.
And that's not because they're bad cigars. It's because those, like, I put those five cigars in a category of, this is, like, subjectively for my palate, these are the best cigars that I've ever smoked. And if you want to call it a 100-point rating, I don't think 100-point rating is the way to apply it, but to say, I've not smoked a cigar better than this, and I've got roughly five cigars. Did anything come close this year? No. There was a lot of really good cigars this year, and I would say, if I said the best five cigars I've ever smoked, 1 through 5, where do the cigars rank this year? I'd say some of the best cigars I smoked this year are probably in the high teens, like
Okay.
11 to 15 kind of thing.
That's
So
not a bad position, though.
no,
I mean, conceivably speaking, I mean, as Chip and I refuse to believe, you are in your 40s. So I mean, you have smoked quite a number of cigars. Um, Still don't believe that. But that being said, so I mean, you've smoked, fair to say, thousands. Fair to say, right? At
yeah, I
this
think
point,
that's yeah.
and a couple of these cigars might even appear in your top 25 of all time. I mean, that's something to be said. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a sort of big perspective, I think some of the cigars that came out this year are some of the best cigars that have ever been made. Period. And I think from a manufacturing perspective, it's going to be getting harder and harder and harder every year to outdo yourself. You come out with a
Hmm.
cigar that ranks top 10 this year. How do you outperform that? Because yeah, there's a lot of tobacco out there and there's a lot of different ways to create a cigar, but eventually you're going to hit a wall where you can only do so much with tobacco. You can only come out with so many different flavor combinations.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't think we're at that point yet because, last year we had some really great cigars. This year we had some even better cigars. And I think from my perspective, I'd say this is one of the first times, at least in the last decade, where I could say I could randomly walk into a humidor and grab a relatively new cigar and have, at minimum, a good experience.
Hmm.
I'm not going to have a bad experience. And if I walked into a humidor a decade ago and
Yeah.
grabbed a random cigar, I would probably not have a good experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Cigars overall are way better now than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting discussion for another time, I think. I think that, people hold the cigar boom of the mid 90s up on a pedestal just a little too much
Yeah.
because I think where we're at historically, I think surpasses the cigar boom. Now, that's from my perspective. I wasn't smoking during the cigar boom. I was in, elementary and middle school. So that, it's really hard to say, it's really hard to say that and actually have any authority over it. But now there have been some staples and some legends to have come out of the boom. That's without question, and that's great for them, and that's fantastic. But like you said, John, 10 years ago, and I completely agree with, and it sounds like Tripp does as well. 10 years ago, you walk into a humidor and pick up a random cigar, the odds weren't in your favor.
No.
They just weren't. Their cigars have come so far in just the last 10 years. Because yeah, I can go into the humidor at Michael's and, or have someone give me a cigar blind and I'm gonna have an enjoyable experience for the most part.
But to answer your question, which was, top five cigars smoked all time, and I don't know that I could do them 1 to 5 because to me they're all the same. That is, these are, definitively the best five I've ever smoked, and I don't know that I could pick them. And there is, they are a mix because some Cuban, some non-Cuban. So, if you want to call it number five and number four, sure. But two of those would be the Padron 1926 Family Reserve. As far as I'm concerned, it's a perfect cigar. There's like I just again I from a flavor perspective, I don't know how you can top it. And then on the completely opposite side of that coin, the it's Cuban. It's the La Excepcion Selectos Finos Regional Italia Edition, which I think was 2013, 2012.
I think that was 13.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's 13. I wasn't a big fan of as much of a fan as the re-release of La Excepción Don Jose 2015 release. The 2013 to me was everything that I love in a cigar, and to me, it's you want to talk about a perfect Cuban cigar. That was a perfect Cuban cigar, and I've got a box, and I'm slowly weaning my way down on that box, but that to me, near perfect.
So I think this is interesting because this is kind of taking a change because John's kind of giving us his top five of all time. So this is I think this is really fascinating to kind of hear it in comparison to maybe some of the things that appeared on this year's list. So John, let's just go through the rest of the years because I want to see where you said since you kind of misunderstood the exercise. But this is fine. So I was actually going to ask you to just go ahead and just you know what is the best cigar you've ever had? So I'm about to find out. So
I,
what
I,
what
yeah, in fact, I'm furiously trying to pull up my notes in the background, to even see if I have the other three. Um, the I had it on the tip of my brain and completely forgot what number three was. Um, so you guys continue to chat, and I'm going to think here for a second because, like I said, I did this exercise completely wrong. So
Well, so if you did it wrong, you don't have your notes on it in front of you.
no,
It was supposed to be the top five from this list
right,
that you like the most.
right.
Okay.
So if I were to take the top five from, see, that's an easy exercise because I have them ranked based on Cigar Aficionado's rank versus my rank from
That's what I
this
did
list.
too.
Right. So for me, the number five I had down as, and so I'm just looking, 2, 4, 5. I'm gonna do it from number one because my notes are all over the place. So number one was the Padron Family Reserve number 44. That's what I had
Okay,
down as my
I
number
figured
one.
that was going to be your number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
And to me, that was an easy choice, which is why I don't think it should be on the top 25 list. But
so, so Trip, yeah, so Padron is your number one too. We're gonna kind of bounce a
Wise
little all
Man
over the place.
Maduro was actually my number one.
Oh shit. Okay, because I was
Um,
gonna say I thought I was gonna be the asshole and disagree with you guys on that. So,
in a robusto though, Trippy.
no, not in the Robusto.
I was gonna say don't make us call you out. I know you said it
I
before the show, and that's technically off record, but you said it's not
Yeah,
even the
the
best
the
size.
Corona Gorda in that size is so much better than the Robusto,
It's
and
magical.
even the Toro's a lot better.
The Toro is better than
But
the
the
robusto. Yeah.
the Corona Gorda in that blend is fire.
I would agree with that.
I absolutely love that blend. I think that blend is stellar.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's absolutely. I I was a big fan of the El Huevense, particularly in the Toro Guapo, which is surprising
Mhm.
because I'm a smaller gauge smoker, typically. Um, and I think that Wise Man Maduro is the best thing that Nick's done so far,
I think so too.
which is kind of exciting for what the future holds,
Mhm.
for him because I mean he's still so young in this company, so potentially we could see a lot more great stuff, but the fact that I love the El Huevense so much, love the Wise Man Maduro so much, and some of his other stuff as well. Have either one of you smoked the Charter Oak? I still have never smoked the
Oh
Charter
yeah,
Oak, and that
Yeah,
scored
dude.
really well this year.
I'm actually super stoked that Cigar Aficionado gave props because
yeah, me too.
what they said about the value of that cigar, I've been saying that since he came out with the Charter Oak line,
Hmm.
that at that price point, it is very, very tough to compete with the value of flavor you're getting at that price point is very tough to compete with.
Yeah, absolutely. That cigar, those both of the blends, the Connecticut and the Broadleaf, both of them are incredible for $5 or $6, depending on which size you get.
Yeah.
What's interesting is there was a lot this year out of the qualifying cigars. There were a lot, five off the top of my head that were considered value cigars, and one of them was a top 10 cigar selection this year was the JFR Lunatic. Um, the last call, AJ Fernandez's last call, the Brick House was a qualifying cigar. Charter Oak scored the highest, and the the Gilberto from Oliva was another one,
Mm.
just
Hmm.
off the top of my head. So, um, and then Alianza as well it was another EPC product that is one of their more value brands. So it was interesting that that some of these cigars that, people would consider, value brand, a lot of people pass in the humidor because like they're a quote unquote above it,
Hmm.
particularly in the praise that you just lauded for the Charter Oak, John, that these cigars are scoring and scoring well and scoring enough high enough to actually be on not only in the top 25, but in the Lunatics case, the top 10.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, especially when you've got several high dollar cigars in the top 25. Like that one off, which is 30 bucks, I think.
That's not
Yeah.
cheap. That's
It's high,
not
yeah,
cheap
it's
date, man.
The McAuliffe, which is $42.
Yep.
There's a lot of high dollar cigars that $6 cigar beat.
yeah, exactly. So that's the crazy thing. Like the one off, the Concessions, a mid-teen cigar. The Ramona
Mm.
Jonas is a mid-teen cigar. The McAuliffe, you know, and um, the
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 H.
Monte
Upmann
Cristo
Sir
Nicaraguan.
Winston.
The Monte Cristo Nicaraguan is a $10 smoke,
Yep.
10 or 12 for that Robusto, and that's number 10. That's lower than the JFR Lunatic. So it's like anything, like what we all tell people when we talk to cigars are, like anything. They're like wine, they're like beer, they're like whiskey. You can buy, a $25 bottle of wine that's better than a $200 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
It just it really is subjective, and it just sometimes you hit the lotto with a blend, and it just doesn't cost you that much to make it, and so therefore you can sell it at an affordable price. But I have a hunch that JFR Lunatics might be going up soon. I'm just putting that out
Yeah.
there. Um, so okay, so the Wise Man Maduro was your number one trip.
Yep.
Um, you had the Padron, John.
Yep.
Um, I I really struggled with this because I think that the Padron is incredibly good, and I actually am a really big fan of the Encore as well. So I had the Padron as number one, but I thought I was gonna tick people off by saying that I was even considering it. So it's nice to know, Trip, that you actually fell on the sword for me there. But so what did you have? What did you have as number two? What were
Padron.
the rest of
The
your top
Padron.
five?
My number two was the Padron, and number three was the Fausto. Because, like I said, in my opinion, that's the best cigar Pete makes. Then, as I said before, just to recap, four is the Cosecha from Plasencia, and number five is the Sir Winston.
Interesting. So that's
Yeah, but did you smoke to see that? And that's where I think we get into trouble because it's specifically the Sir Winston October 17, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going off the best Sir Winston I've
Yeah,
had.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair enough.
If it's I mean, there's bad Sir Winstons out there, and
Yes.
if I got one of those, it wouldn't be in the top five.
and John has smoked several of them apparently. So
I smoked one last night.
in,
For
in
me,
preparation.
the Wise Man Maduro Robusto would be number two. I had the Hoyde Nicaragua and Antonio Gran Reserva as number three. I mean, to me, that's just a magical cigar.
It really is.
I had the H. Upmann Sir Winston as number four. And again, that's kind of assuming that the best example of that cigar, and then because I'm all backwards here. I had the Hemingway as number five.
You really hold that cigar in such high regard.
I do, and again, I think it's because if you look at if you put all these cigars, really it comes down to you put all these cigars on a shelf, and you're like, I want to smoke. What do I grab? And even if you had 50 cigars, that Hemingway for me is like it's one of those rare cigars that has a permanent place in my humidor. So I'm gonna reach for it and I'm gonna smoke it every single time. I love the size, the format is fantastic. No disrespect to the large ring gauge smokers out there. I don't have the time to smoke a Churchill, man. I can't sit like
Right.
even when it's summertime. I don't get like, and I'm not a guy who's gonna smoke a Churchill in an hour and 15 minutes. I'm gonna take 3 hours, 3 hours 15, whatever to smoke a Churchill. Man, I don't got time for that. That's two cigars. I could almost smoke three Hemingways in the time that it takes me to smoke one Churchill.
Unless it's that one Hemingway. I don't remember the name of it. They've got one that's like Presidente size.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big cigar. that's a big cigar. It's like a 3 hour
Or the
plus, right?
Coñones. That's not even the same blend, but the Coñones, those they were the
Double.
they were the diggers before the
Yeah,
diggers
yeah, yeah,
existed.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
The I mean, those
I
cigars are
forgot about
massive.
those.
Yeah, man, we still sell them at the retailer here, and they still sell really well,
Wow.
really well. It's
I
been a
didn't know
while
they
since
still
those.
made them.
Yeah, this is my list chalked up. I had Padron at number one, and then I had Encore at number two, Wise Man at number three. My number four was it was really really hard because I really like the Ramoniones by AJ. I think that cigar is really fantastic.
You know,
Um,
you say that, it's so funny because that cigar has been on my list to try, and I have not gotten my filthy hands on it to
Yeah, me
try.
too.
Yeah, but
it's
I've
it's
heard
really
nothing
good.
but good things. So
It's really good.
yeah,
And then I had and this was past the exercise, but at number six I had the JDN. So it sounds like we
yeah,
all kind of have similar
My number
palates.
6 was the JDN too.
Okay, so that's
great
that's really
cigar.
interesting. So not as much controversy as I suppose as I was hoping for, but hopefully there's people listening that are just absolutely like hammering at their keyboards in anger.
But
Just
but again, I think the toughest thing for me is that of their list, I mean, I haven't smoked the Fausto, believe it or not, because
Really?
no, because
Wow.
like
wow.
I can't walk into a shop and pick up a Fausto,
Yeah.
even if I'm down in the States. Most of the shops I walk
Yeah,
into,
not a
they're not
lot of
gonna have a
shops have them.
Fausto, right?
It's one of the lesser known blends. I think
Yeah.
you're going to be able to find them now. 6 months,
Yes.
you'll be able to find them all day.
Yeah. The only reason I've smoked the Esteli is from IPCPR. The only reason I've smoked the Rocky Patel 15th anniversary is because they're available up here. Same thing. Villiger Sandoro is because the IPCPR. It's the only reason I had a chance to smoke that.
Hmm.
The Melanio I bought myself, ironically, back in the day. So I bought a box. That's what I never got a sample. I just bought a box.
Which one was the Esteli?
The Black Market Esteli.
Black market us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I haven't smoked that cigar.
See?
That's the black market to me is the same as the Milano. It's just I can't wrap my head around that cigar. I can't understand why people like it.
You know what, Tripp? That is a fantastic analogy for me because I think that they're in the exact same position for me. If you look at the V Maduro versus the V Melanio and you look at the black market regular versus the black market Esteli, dude, I love the black market regular. I love that cigar. I smoked that cigar all day long, and for whatever reason, the Esteli just didn't hit my palate like the original black market.
See, and
Go
I,
figure.
I actually thought the Esteli was a little better than the regular black market because the black market is just
It's a
completely
spice bomb.
yeah.
I love it.
I mean, not even the
That's why
spice.
I
I
love
don't know.
it.
I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. I just hate that
You'll
cigar.
you'll like the Fausto then, John, when you eventually smoke it if you like spice bombs.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's a real spice bomb.
I mean, how can you not like a lot? I mean, if you enjoy cigars, I mean, it's tough not to like most of what Pete makes.
Yeah,
Just, just on spec, right? But
absolutely.
back to what you were saying at the beginning of the show, Barrett. I was actually surprised if you'd asked me to put money on it. I was not expecting Tatawahe to show up on their list, and I feel like they've kind of gotten snubbed
A few years in a row.
a few years in a row. Now I'd challenge because I haven't looked. I didn't look all the past years. I'd like to find a year in which Cohiba didn't make the list.
I'm not sure there is one.
I think they've made every year.
It's pretty close. I'm sure there's one. Surely there's
I
one
don't know.
or a couple
Maybe.
that they've missed. But that's
Actually,
a pretty valid point. Oh, Tripp's looking.
yeah, I am. They weren't on the list last year.
Okay.
Well, that's true, but didn't they have like 5 Cubans last year? They had the Bolivar,
Yeah, they had a
Ramoneones,
Bolivar,
Trinidad, I think,
Partagas,
Partagas.
um,
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
let's see, a Romeo.
Romeo, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, there were like 4 Cubans last year.
And again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show, I think the problem with that, and certainly, obviously, I represent the non-Cuban market because we do reviews of non-Cuban cigars. You're talking 3 or 4 spots on the top 25 list that are being taken away from non-Cuban manufacturers from product that Americans can't, legally buy in a retailer.
Hmm.
So how many more brands could have gotten some love if they had a position available on the top 25 list?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's some cigars like we talked about, Warped and Mombacho, that I thought they were shoo-ins for this year. Mombacho was kind of a stretch. I mean, they scored a 92, which is a solid score. 90 wins and above qualify for the
Yeah.
tournament. But that cigar was just smoking so good. It's just smoking so good right now. I was convinced it was just going to sail through it, and I completely missed on that.
One day Cigar Aficionado is going to wake up and realize Southern Draw is a cigar company, and they're going to try and review something from Southern Draw, and then all of a sudden it's going to be Southern Draw all day, every day, because they've made consensus lists going back 3 years now, 4 years, and they've had multiple entries. I mean,
But there's a lot of brands like that they're on everybody's list except for Cigar
Dunbarton
Aficionado.
Tobacco and
I was going to
Trust.
say Steve Saka right there, man. They're
Yeah,
not,
what was that? Like he took over the list last year.
yeah, but they don't
I've
review.
heard
They don't
there's some
review
bad
his
blood.
cigars. He doesn't have a review. He's never
Yeah.
gotten reviewed by them.
I've heard there's some bad blood
As
there.
Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, he's never gotten reviewed by them. So
I think whoever their retailer is needs to step up their game and have a wider variety of product. If truly the way that the cigar is going to be selected is by randomly walking in the humidor and grabbing whatever in the humidor, then I think the onus is on that retailer to carry a wider variety of product, because there's so many cigars now that are out there that have gone from what you would call ultra boutique to mainstream boutique,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
give me
I
give me
agree.
an example, John. Just one off the top of your
Warp
head.
was a perfect example. I mean, you look at Warp. Warp didn't hit the market till 2013.
Mhm.
So I mean, the fact that after only 4 years, they would show up on Cigar Aficionado's list is mind-boggling to me, because there's like a boutique brand to show up after only 4 years in Cigar Aficionado. I don't get that, because there's lots of boutique manufacturers that have been around longer than that and have never shown up on Cigar Aficionado. So that's why I'm so confused as to what is whittling that list down from the selection process. I mean, obviously it's got to be whatever is available in the humidor that they're shopping at, but there's so many other boutique brands out there. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair point, and it's a fair criticism, I think, because I think that there are a lot of cigars that are passed over from even getting reviewed.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can disagreeing with their reviews is a completely separate argument. If they end up reviewing one of Dumbarton Tobacco Trust cigars and they just scorch it, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, it's fine. It's been in the running at least. But I mean, we're talking about cigars that don't even get that opportunity. Cigar companies that don't even get that opportunity, or get considerably lower opportunities, to have the opportunity to get in the tournament, so to speak, at the end of the year. And so, yeah, these companies that we've talked about so frequently tonight, they're going to show up on the list, one, because of the consistency of the product. You talk about your Padrones and you talk about your Fuentes, the consistency of the product and the constant availability. They're always there.
Were you guys surprised at all to see that there was no Drew Estate cigars that made the list? Or I think there's a bunch that would have been eligible, and they've shown up on the list in the past. The Sun-Grown, the Florida Sun-Grown, the Undercrown Sun-Grown. Neither of those cigars showed up on the list, and those have both been,
And
Undercrown Sun-Grown had a qualifying cigar. It was the Pig.
and so did the Pappy, right?
The Pappy was a qualifying cigar too.
traditional. Yeah.
I think those are two of the best cigars that Drew Estate has ever made, and I'm surprised I was expecting one of those to make the list.
Actually, Bear, you bring up an interesting point. How does the pig size make the list for review? Because the pigs are not exactly readily available for most retailers, right?
I think that's one of the most frustrating points with it, is the fact that that cigar gets on, and like, how are they ever going to get another one of them? And furthermore, if this is blind tasting, like blind reviews have a place in this realm that we all exist in, and I think it's commendable to review a cigar blind, and that way you don't have any preconceived notions. But I mean, guys, we smoke enough cigars. I'm sorry, Zane Gamble from Blind Man's Puff, or person A from the panel of Cigar Aficionado, knows what a chisel is.
Yes.
Yeah. If you
They
see a
knew
chisel,
what
you know
that
exactly
eye of the
what you're
shark
smoking.
was. They knew what that Irish shark was. They knew what that Andalusian bull was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so don't sit here and tell me that, oh, I had no preconceived notion going into it when I was smoking the cigar. Oh, that's bullshit, man.
Well, the same would be true of the H. Upmann Sir Winston. I mean, if you've ever smoked a Cuban cigar in your life, there's only a handful of cigars in the Cuban market that are that size and that shape. So it immediately whittles it down. Just like you said, by the size, it's got to be one of three cigars.
Yeah.
Easy.
So
something something to take into next time. I think there are a lot of topics that we could readdress at a later time, but we've gone a little long tonight. But I had a feeling it would, just because it was going to be a lively conversation, and I appreciate it. Although I didn't do a great job of explaining it, that John missed the explanation of what we were doing on the exercise. But I think it sparked some really great points and some really great discussion. We got to learn what some of John's favorite cigars were, so that was really good. And I think, like I said, we already stated at the beginning of the show, I think we can all agree that this list, influences the industry in a very positive way, because it brings attention to the industry and puts a spotlight on the industry that the three of us love so much, and that so many, the people that are listening and watching to this show do appreciate, from either whether it's just a hobby or a true mainstay passion in their life. It is something that puts a spotlight on the premium cigar industry, and that in any way, I will state, in any way, form, or fashion, is an absolute positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Giddy up.
We need to, Cigar Aficionado needs to do something polarizing again in the future, so we can have John McTavish back. Because apparently that's all I'm going to use him for. So, but gentlemen, sincerely, I really want to thank you guys. Clutch. Approach both of you. You guys absolutely stepped up to be on the show tonight with insanely short notice, especially 2 days before Christmas. I can't.
Wait,
I can't.
Christmas is in 2 days?
Well, technically,
I got some shopping to do.
Oh man, I got some shopping to do.
You just got married, John. You can't screw this up, man. This is your first Christmas.
I just buy her diamonds. She'll be fine. Diamonds or emeralds.
If only it were that easy.
Yeah.
Just go out and get some. Go ahead and grab some. But again, really appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight, and appreciate you guys if you guys are watching this on the replay. I hope everyone has an absolute very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year out there. We will be back before the New Year. I'm going to actually have Mr. Seth Geis of the website you're affiliated with, John. Developing Palates will get a double dose on LOS Fumar Takes 2 weeks in a row.
Nice.
We're going to be talking about Cubans next week, so tune in for that.
Nice.
Because I am going to just be a sponge as much on that show and try to piss him off, which won't be too hard because we don't really agree on much. But that's okay, because I really like Seth, and he really doesn't give two hoots about disagreeing with me, so that's even better.
Ask him what he thinks about my father when you're on the show.
I'm going to ask him specifically about the first Las Calaveras, because him and I are going to have words about
there
that.
There it is.
Because I like that cigar a lot.
Yeah, so do I. I've got the ring. I like to bust out the ring every time just to get his goat.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate everyone tuning in, listening as always. We've got a great schedule in the new year coming up that you will be published, and you guys will check out some fantastic folks that we're going to be having on, just like these two gentlemen tonight. I'll go ahead and put one out there. We're actually having Tripp back on St. Patrick's Day.
It's going to be a fun one.
It's going to be fun. We're going to kind of revisit what we did with Dennis and him.
What we tried to do.
What we tried to do, but we're going to get it right this time. And even if we screw it up again, it'll still be fun, because it was fun this last time. So we'll have a St. Patrick's Day edition on March 17th with Tripp and Dennis of Cigar Federation. It'll be fun. I know Cigar Aficionado will definitely screw something up in the future, so we'll definitely have John back as well.
We could praise them. I'm just saying, we could get me on their good side. We could talk about
we could do
goodness.
That. Yeah. They get a lot of things right, so we'll pick something. We'll pick something out of the hat, John. We'll figure it out there. We'll figure it out. So tune in next week for Take 60 with Seth Geis of Developing Palates. Again, everyone have a very safe, fun, and very Merry Christmas. As always, I'm Barry Duplessis, live from the Casa Cueva studios of Euless, Texas. This was El Oso Fumar Takes Take 59. And we'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas.